The glow of the dual monitors painted my face in a shifting tapestry of blue and white light, lines of code scrolling endlessly upwards like digital rain against a dark window. It was late, well past midnight, the kind of late where the city outside my Chicago apartment window seemed to exhale a collective sigh, settling into a deeper quiet. My own sigh mirrored it, a breath heavy with more than just fatigue. My fingers danced across the keyboard, a familiar rhythm that usually brought a sense of focused calm. But tonight, the logic felt brittle, the algorithms mocking my own increasingly illogical life. My apartment, small but meticulously ordered, was my sanctuary, the one place where chaos felt controllable. Every book spine aligned, every surface clear stark contrast to the messy, demanding tendrils of obligation that reached for me even here, in the heart of the city, miles away from the suburban house I still helped pay for. Then, the specific vibration buzzed against the polished wood of my desk. Not a notification, not a work alert. Her ringtone, my mother, Sarah, a Pavlovian knot tightened in my stomach. A familiar dread mixed with a deeply ingrained sense of duty I couldn't seem to shake, no matter how frayed it became. I let it vibrate twice more, a small, futile act of rebellion, before picking up. Alex, honey, are you busy? Her voice, saccharine sweet, dripped with a manufactured warmth that always set my teeth on edge. It was the prelude, the gentle softening before the ask. Hey, Mom, I replied, trying to keep the weariness out of my voice, scrubbing a hand over my tired eyes. Just wrapping up some work. What's up? Oh, nothing much, dear. Just checking in. Your father sends his love. A beat of silence, perfectly timed. Actually, honey, there's a little something you know your sister, Chloe. Here it comes, I thought. The knot tightened further. What about her? Well, she's found this amazing online course. It's all about digital marketing and entrepreneurship. The instructor is supposed to be incredible. Really helps people launch their own thing. She's so excited, Alex. Really thinks this could be it. I could picture Chloe now, lounging on the sofa in their living room, scrolling through some influencer's feed, convinced this was the magic bullet that would save her from the dreaded prospect of actually finding and holding down a job. Her business ideas were fleeting, expensive bursts of enthusiasm that invariably fizzled out, leaving behind only credit card debt and disappointment, usually mine. Another course, Mom? I asked, the skepticism leaking through despite my best efforts. What happened to the artisanal candle making or the drop shipping venture? Oh, those were just stepping stones. Honey, Sarah said dismissively, her tone shifting slightly, a hint of impatience creeping in. This one feels different, more professional. The thing is, there's an early bird discount, but registration closes tomorrow. It's just a small fee, really, for the potential return. How small? I asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't be insignificant. Not by my standards. She named a figure several $100s I hadn't budgeted for. Money I'd mentally earmarked for finally upgrading the graphics card that was starting to bottleneck my freelance design work. Money that could have gone towards the vacation I hadn't taken in 3 years. The one my friends kept asking about. Mom, I just sent money over last week for the property taxes, I said, the words feeling heavy and useless even as I spoke them. I know, honey, and we appreciate it so much. You have no idea, she cooed, the sweetness back in full force. It's just this is an investment in Chloe's future. Your sister needs a little support right now. You know how sensitive she is. Sensitive. That was the word they always used. Manipulative felt more accurate. But I kept that thought locked away. Another brick in the wall I was building inside myself. I looked at the lines of code on my screen, the complex structures I built for a living, and felt a surge of bitter irony. I could architect elegant solutions for software, but I couldn't debug the faulty wiring of my own family dynamics. All right, Mom, I said, the resignation tasting like ash in my mouth. I'll transfer it in the morning. Oh, thank you, Alex. You're the best son. Truly, Chloe will be thrilled. Her voice was bright, relief washing over her words now that the transaction was secured. Get some sleep, honey. Don't work too hard. The call ended. Silence descended again, heavier this time. I leaned back in my chair, the worn leather groaning softly. It wasn't just the money. It was the expectation, the assumption, the relentless emotional toll. It was the years of quiet sacrifices, the missed opportunities, the constant, low-grade anxiety about the next request, the next manufactured crisis. I was the family fix-it guy, the silent benefactor, the reliable engine pulling a train that never seemed to appreciate the fuel it consumed. And the engine was running low. The weariness wasn't just physical anymore. It was soul-deep, a corrosion eating away at my own aspiration, my own right to a life not solely defined by their needs. This feeling, this heavy, suffocating blanket of responsibility felt like a debt I could never fully repay, a chain forged not of metal, but of guilt and misplaced loyalty. And tonight, the links fell tighter than ever. The weeks that followed blurred into a familiar pattern. Late nights working, weekends catching up on freelance projects to supplement my income, and the obligatory Sunday evening video call with the family. These calls had become a ritual I dreaded, a weekly performance where I tried to project an image of stability and success while carefully navigating the minefield of their expectations. This particular Sunday felt different from the moment their faces popped up on my screen. My father, Michael, usually reserved and prone to letting my mother do the talking, had a stern set to his jaw. My mother, Sarah, lacked her usual forced cheerfulness. Her smile seemed painted on, thin and brittle. And Chloe looked bored, idly flicking through her phone just off camera, already radiating an aura of entitled indifference. Alex, my father began, his voice gruff, skipping the pleasantries. We need to talk about the house. My stomach did a slow, cold flip. The house, the sprawling suburban symbol of their aspiration, the mortgage for which I'd been quietly, consistently contributing to for years, ever since my first real job out of college. It was understood, never explicitly stated, but always implied, that my support was crucial to keeping it afloat. What about it? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral, bracing myself. The adjustable rate kicked in. Sarah jumped in, her voice tight with anxiety. The payments have gone up significantly. We've looked at the numbers, son, Michael added, his gaze hardening. We're going to need you to increase your monthly contribution. Quite a bit, actually. He named a figure that made my breath catch. It wasn't a small increase. It was nearly double what I was already sending. A wave of dizziness washed over me. I thought about my own rising rent in Chicago, my student loans, the freelance income that fluctuated, the emergency fund I was desperately trying to build for myself. I thought about the constant pressure, the feeling of running on a treadmill just to keep them comfortable. Dad, Mom, I started, struggling to find the words. I understand things are tight, but that's a huge jump. I'm already stretched pretty thin myself. My own expenses have gone up, and work has been demanding. Oh, here we go. Chloe sighed dramatically, finally lowering her phone. Her expression a mask of petulant martyrdom. Always about your expenses, Alex. Don't you even care about us anymore? About keeping a roof over our heads? Chloe, that's not fair. I shot back, a flash of anger piercing through the fog of anxiety. I've been helping out for years. I care, but this is... It sounds like you're saying it's too much for you, my father interrupted, his voice heavy with disappointment, or perhaps accusation. After everything we've done for you, done for me, the words slipped out before I could stop them, sharp and incredulous. I've been sending money home since I was 22. I put off grad school. I drive a 10-year-old car. I haven't taken a real vacation because there was always something: the leaking roof, the car repair, Chloe's investments. Don't you dare bring your sister into this, Sarah snapped, her painted smile vanishing, replaced by a fierce, protective glare. We're talking about the family home, the place you grew up, a place I barely see because I'm always working to help pay for it. The frustration, years of it, bubbled to the surface, hot and acrid. I'm doing my best, but there's a limit. I have my own life to build too. There was a heavy silence. I could see the shock on their faces, not because of the content, perhaps, but because I'd finally voiced the resentment I'd swallowed for so long. Then, my mother leaned closer to the camera, her eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a low, challenging tone that sliced through the tension like ice. "Well, Alex," she said, each word deliberate, loaded. "If you see supporting your family as such a burden, then perhaps you shouldn't be involved anymore." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't said in anger, not really. It was said with a chilling dismissiveness, a calculated emotional checkmate. "If you don't like the terms, you can leave." The implication was clear. My worth to them was conditional, transactional. My love, my support, my sacrifices, they weren't valued. They were simply expected. And if I couldn't meet the ever-increasing demands, I was disposable. In that moment, something inside me didn't just crack, it shattered. The years of accumulated weariness, the swallowed resentment, the gnawing feeling of being taken for granted, it all coalesced into a single, cold point of clarity. The hurt was sharp, breathtaking, but beneath it, something else was stirring. A strange, unfamiliar sense of finality. I looked at their faces on the screen, my father's stubborn pride, my mother's wounded manipulation, my sister's smug indifference. They weren't seeing me, Alex, their son, their brother. They were seeing a resource, an ATM, a solution to their problems. And they had just made it abundantly clear that the resource was complaining too much. I didn't shout. I didn't argue further. The fight had gone out of me, replaced by a profound, almost serene, emptiness. The knot in my stomach dissolved, replaced by a chilling calm. My gaze met my mother's through the screen. The flicker of hurt in my eyes, I could feel it extinguish, replaced by something harder, something resolute. "Okay," I said softly, the word barely a whisper, yet it felt like the loudest sound in the room. "Okay, what do you mean, okay?" my father demanded, frowning. "Okay," I repeated, my voice steady now. "I understand." I didn't elaborate. I didn't need to. The decision had been made, not in anger, but in the stark, cold light of their own words. The chain, stretched taut for so long, had finally snapped. I ended the video call, the click of the mouse echoing in the sudden, deafening silence of my apartment. The screen went dark, reflecting only my own pale, determined face. The burden hadn't lifted, not yet, but I had just decided to put it down. The walk back from the train station felt different that evening. The familiar sounds of Chicago, the distant wail of a siren, the rumble of the L train overhead, the chatter spilling from late-night diners seemed sharper, clearer. Or maybe it was me who was different. The heavy cloak of obligation I'd worn for so long felt lighter, not gone, but loosened, as if I'd finally shrugged my shoulders out from under its crushing weight. Back in my apartment, the meticulous order suddenly felt less like a sanctuary and more like a command center. There was no rage fueling my actions, no dramatic slamming of drawers or tearful recriminations. Instead, a strange, methodical calm guided my hands. It was the same focused energy I brought to debugging complex code. But this time, the system I was purging was my own life. I sat down at my desk, the glow of the monitors now illuminating a task far more personal than work. First, the phone. I scrolled through my contacts, my thumb hovering over Mom, Sarah. I pictured her face during the video call, the challenging glint in her eyes, the dismissive curl of her lip as she uttered those fateful words. "If you see this as a burden," with a decisive tap, I blocked the number. Then Dad, Michael, his stern disapproval, his refusal to acknowledge my own struggles, blocked. Then Chloe, her petulant entitlement, her casual cruelty masked as sensitivity, blocked. One by one, the digital lifelines were severed. It felt less like an act of anger and more like closing doors, quietly, yet firmly locking them from my side. Next, the finances. I logged into my online banking portal, navigating to the automated payments section. There it was, the monthly transfer labeled family support, mortgage assist. It had been running like clockwork for years, a silent drain on my resources. With a few clicks, I canceled the recurring payment. The confirmation pop-up appeared, Are you sure you want to delete this scheduled transfer? A flicker of something guilt, fear, tried to surface. An old reflex born of years of conditioning. I pushed it down. Yes, click, done. I went through my budgeting apps, removing the categories I'd created specifically to accommodate their endless emergencies. My gaze fell upon a framed photograph on my bookshelf. It was from years ago, a rare family vacation before the financial pressures had truly taken hold. Before the lines of resentment had been etched so deeply, we were all smiling genuinely. It seemed, though memory can be a deceptive filter, me, a lankier, more hopeful version of myself, standing between my parents. Chloe perched on my dad's shoulders, beaming. A pang, sharp and unexpected, resonated in my chest. A mourning, perhaps, not for the people they had become, or maybe always were, but for the idea of family I had clung to for so long. I picked up the frame, the glass cool against my fingertips. I looked at the smiling faces, searching for a hint of the dysfunction that now defined us. Was it there all along, hidden beneath the surface? Had I simply refused to see it? After a long moment, I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, the one filled with old cables, defunct chargers, and forgotten paperwork, and placed the photo face down inside. Closing the drawer felt like closing a chapter, not tearing out the pages, but acknowledging that the story had moved on, and I was no longer a character in that particular narrative. I leaned back in my chair, the silence of the apartment enveloping me. It wasn't the heavy, expectant silence of before, waiting for the next demand. It was a clean slate silence, vast, open, mine. A profound sense of relief washed over me, so potent it was almost dizzying. It wasn't euphoria, not yet. It was the quiet exhaustion after a long battle. The dawning realization that the fight was finally over because I had chosen to walk away from the battlefield. There was a whisper of guilt, the ghost of years of ingrained responsibility murmuring that I was being selfish, cruel even, but it was drowned out by a stronger, clearer voice, the voice of self-preservation. This wasn't cruelty, it was survival. They had drawn the line with Sarah's challenge. I had simply chosen to step across it and keep walking. The peace settling in my chest felt tentative, fragile, but undeniably real. For the first time in a long time, the future felt less like a predetermined path paved with obligations and more like an open horizon, waiting for me to choose my own direction. I took a deep breath, the air filling my lungs feeling cleaner, lighter. I had saved myself. For months past, 4 months of blessed, uninterrupted quiet. The phantom limb of guilt still twinged occasionally, usually late at night, or when I saw a family interacting warmly on the street. But mostly, life had taken on a new, brighter hue. Without the constant financial drain and emotional blackmail, I felt lighter. I was sleeping better. The perpetual knot of anxiety in my stomach had loosened its grip, and I found myself smiling more readily. I'd reinvested the family support money into myself. I finally upgraded my work computer, making my freelance projects smoother and more profitable. I started putting aside a serious amount towards a down payment on my own place, a condo perhaps, something definitively mine. I reconnected with friends I'd inadvertently neglected, enjoying weekend brunches and evening drinks without constantly checking my phone or calculating how much I could afford to spend. I even started researching that trip to Europe I'd dreamed of for years, Italy, maybe Greece. The possibility felt real now, tangible. I looked healthier too. The dark circles under my eyes had faded, and the perpetual tension in my shoulders had eased. Catching my reflection in the window of my favorite coffee shop one Saturday morning, I saw not the weary, burdened provider, but just Alex, a 29-year-old software engineer enjoying a sunny Chicago weekend. I kept my old phone, the one with the now blocked family numbers, tucked away in a drawer. I wasn't sure why. Perhaps a subconscious need for proof, or maybe a deeply buried, unwanted sliver of morbid curiosity. That morning, while cleaning, I came across it. On a whim, I charged it and turned it on. It immediately buzzed, choked with notifications, dozens of missed calls and texts, automatically blocked. But the voicemail alerts had still come through. A strange mix of detachment and curiosity prompted me to check the voicemails. I scrolled through the list, the dates stretching back over the past few months. The first few messages, from shortly after I cut contact, were from my mother. Her tone was bewildered, then wounded, then laced with a pleading edge I hadn't heard before. "Alex, honey, please call us. We're worried. Did something happen? Chloe misses you terribly." Lies, I thought, a cold certainty settling in. Chloe missed my wallet. Then came messages from my father, gruff and demanding at first, then tinged with a note of confusion. "Alex, your mother's beside herself. Pick up the phone. This is ridiculous." As the weeks progressed in the timestamps, the tone shifted dramatically. Pleading turned to anger, then recrimination. "How could you do this to us, Alex? After everything," Sarah's voice cracked with manufactured tears. "You're abandoning your family." Then came the panic. Voicemails left just weeks ago. My mother's voice was high-pitched, frantic. "Alex, you have to call the bank. They sent another letter. They're talking about foreclosure. It's because you stopped sending the money. You've done this. You're letting us lose our home." My father's message followed, laced with a desperate fury. "Damn it, Alex, pick up. They're threatening to take the house. Your mother's a wreck. Is this what you wanted? To see us out on the street? Foreclosure." I frowned, sipping my coffee, the warmth of the mug suddenly not reaching the chill spreading through my chest. Foreclosure was a process. It didn't happen overnight just because 1 month's assistance check didn't arrive. I'd stopped the payments for months ago. Even if my contribution was the entire mortgage payment, which it wasn't, the timeline felt off, suspiciously off. A cold dread, different from the old anxiety, began to coil in my gut. I thought back to that final video call, their insistence on the immediate, drastic need for more money due to the rate adjustment. Had that even been true? My mind raced. I had a friend, Mark, who worked in mortgage processing at a major bank, not the one my parents used, but he knew the systems. I hesitated for only a moment before dialing his number. "Mark, hey, it's Alex. Got a weird question for you. Kind of sensitive." I explained the situation vaguely, focusing on the foreclosure timeline after support was cut. 4 months. Mark sounded skeptical. "Yeah, that seems fast unless they were already seriously delinquent before you stopped paying. Like, multiple months behind. Usually, there are notices, attempts to work things out. It takes time. Unless they were already seriously delinquent." The phrase echoed in my mind. A sickening possibility began to dawn. I thanked Mark and hung up, my hand trembling slightly. I needed confirmation. Leveraging a vague professional contact I had at their specific lending institution, a connection made years ago at a tech conference, I made a call. It took some careful navigating, citing concern for my parents' well-being and referencing my long-term, albeit recently ceased, contributions towards the property they held the loan on. After some verification hurdles, citing privacy but hinting at familial concern, the representative cautiously confirmed the payment history. The truth hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. They hadn't just fallen behind after I stopped paying. According to the bank's records, Michael and Sarah Miller had stopped making regular mortgage payments nearly 6 months before that final, desperate video call. They had been pocketing the substantial mortgage assistance I'd been sending them for months, while simultaneously letting the actual mortgage slide into serious default. They hadn't needed more money because the rate adjusted. They needed more money because the bank's final warnings were arriving, because the consequence of their deception was catching up to them. The emergency wasn't the rate hike. It was the culmination of their own fraud. The initial shock was quickly consumed by a wave of icy fury. It wasn't just irresponsibility anymore. It wasn't just entitlement. It was calculated, deliberate deception. They had lied to me, manipulated me, taken my hard-earned money under false pretenses, all while painting me as the ungrateful son if I dared question the burden. Any lingering trace of guilt, any shred of doubt about my decision to cut ties, evaporated instantly. It wasn't just justified, It was necessary. They hadn't just taken my money. They had betrayed my trust on a fundamental level. The sadness I'd felt burying the photograph morphed into a cold, hard certainty. I hadn't abandoned my family. I had escaped a toxic, parasitic relationship built on lies. The coffee tasted bitter now, and the bright Chicago morning suddenly felt harsh and unforgiving, mirroring the stark, ugly truth I had just uncovered. The anger simmered beneath the surface for the rest of the day, a cold, hard knot in my chest. It wasn't the explosive rage of hurt feelings, but the focused fury of betrayal confirmed. By evening, it had settled into a steely resolve. I knew what I had to do, not for them, but for me. One final conversation, one final severing, this time armed with the undeniable truth. Standing by the large window of my apartment, I watched the city lights twinkle to life below. The view, usually a source of comfort and inspiration, now felt like a fortress wall, separating my heart one piece from the chaos I was about to dial back into. One last time, I took a deep, steadying breath and used my regular phone to dial my mother's number. I knew they wouldn't have blocked me. Their hope, however manipulative, would keep that line open. She answered on the first ring, her voice instantly recognizable, though frayed with genuine panic now. Alex. Oh, Alex, thank God. We've been trying to reach you. You have to help us. Before I could speak, my father's voice cut in, booming and accusatory. Alex, is that you? Do you have any idea what's happening here? They're going to take the house, our home, because of you. In the background, I could hear Chloe's theatrical sobbing, a familiar soundtrack to their manufactured dramas. It was a cacophony of blame, panic, and desperation, designed to overwhelm, to induce guilt, to force compliance. But this time, it washed over me without effect. The truth was my anchor. Hello, Mom, Dad, I said, my voice unnervingly calm, level. The contrast to their hysteria was stark. Don't hello, Mom, Dad us, Sarah shrieked. The thin veneer of maternal concern gone, replaced by raw desperation. The bank called again today. We have weeks, Alex, weeks. You have to send the money. You have to fix this. Fix what, Mom? I asked, still calm. Fix the situation you created. What are you talking about? Michael blustered. We told you. The payments went up. We couldn't manage without your help. This is your fault for cutting us off. No, Dad, I said, the coldness in my voice finally cutting through their noise, silencing Chloe's sobs momentarily. That's not the truth, is it? A beat of confused silence on their end. What truth? Sarah asked, her voice suddenly wary. I spoke to the bank. I stated plainly, I know you stopped making mortgage payments 6 months before our last conversation. 6 months before I stopped sending money. You were taking the money I sent for the mortgage and using it for, well, whatever you and Chloe decided was more important than keeping a roof over your heads. The silence that followed was thick, heavy, suffocating. I could almost hear the gears grinding in their minds, the frantic search for a denial, an excuse. That's not true, Sarah finally stammered. But the conviction was gone, replaced by a hollow defensiveness. The bank must be mistaken. We were trying to catch up. Were you? I pressed, relentless now. Were you trying to catch up when you told me you needed more money because of a rate adjustment that paled in comparison to the payments you'd already missed? Were you trying to catch up while taking the money I work late nights and weekends for? Money I sacrificed my own goals for? Alex, please. My mother's voice changed again, shifting to desperate pleading. Okay, maybe things got a little muddled. We made mistakes, but we're your family. You can't let us lose everything. Where will we go? What will Chloe do? Chloe started crying again, louder this time, a performative wail. Chloe is a 25-year-old adult, I said, my voice devoid of sympathy, only weariness. And you are my parents. But family doesn't mean a blank check for deception. It doesn't mean leeching off one member until they have nothing left. It doesn't mean manipulating and lying and then blaming them when your own choices catch up to you. How can you be so cruel? Michael choked out, his voice thick with disbelief or perhaps wounded pride. Cruel, the word almost made me laugh. A short, bitter sound. Is it cruel to finally stop enabling behavior that was hurting all of us, myself included? Is it cruel to expect honesty from the people who are supposed to love you? I sacrificed years of my life, my savings, my opportunities, believing I was helping, but I wasn't helping. I was funding a lie. I paused, taking another deep breath, gathering myself for the finality. I did my part, more than my part, for years. The fact that you are losing the house is not my fault. It is the direct consequence of your choices, your deception. I told you months ago that I couldn't carry the burden anymore. And you told me, in no uncertain terms, that if it was a burden, I shouldn't be involved. We didn't mean it like that, Sarah cried. It doesn't matter how you meant it, I said softly, but with absolute finality. I took you at your word. I am no longer involved. I am not responsible for fixing this. You, Dad, and Chloe will have to figure out what comes next. Alex, no, please, don't do this. The pleading escalated, a desperate, grasping sound. I already did it, months ago, I replied. This conversation is just closure. The closure you didn't get because you were too busy trying to figure out how to keep the scam going. My voice remained steady, calm, infused not with malice, but with the unshakable strength that comes from knowing you are finally free, finally standing on solid ground. Even if you had to clear the rubble yourself, I've done my duty, paid my dues, 10 times over. The rest is up to you. I wish you luck. Truly, you're going to need it. And with that, before they could utter another word, another plea, another accusation, I ended the call. The click echoed in the quiet apartment. I didn't feel anger anymore, or even sadness, really. Just a vast, profound emptiness where the burden used to be. Looking out at the sprawling city lights, I felt a sense of quiet finality, a somber peace. The storm had passed. The wreckage was theirs to sort through. My own rebuilding had already begun. Several more months dissolved into the rhythm of my reclaimed life. The ghost of the final phone call faded, leaving behind not bitterness, but a quiet resolve. The absence of their drama was palpable, like the cessation of a constant, grinding noise I hadn't fully realized was there until it stopped. My focus sharpened, both at work and in my personal life. The project I'd poured my energy into after cutting ties culminated in a successful launch, earning me recognition and a welcome bonus. The trip to Europe was no longer a distant dream. Airline confirmations and hotel bookings for a 3-week tour of Italy sat in my inbox. I'd spend hours tracing routes on maps, reading travel blogs, imagining the taste of real gelato and the sight of ancient ruins bathed in Mediterranean sunlight. It felt symbolic, not just a vacation, but a journey towards a future entirely of my own making. My friendships deepened. Without the constant cloud of familial obligation hanging over me, I was more present, more engaged. Laughter came easier, sharing drinks with friends on a rooftop bar overlooking the Chicago skyline one crisp autumn evening. I felt a sense of belonging and contentment that had eluded me for years. One afternoon, an email popped up from a distant cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to in ages. The subject line was vague. Thinking of you, curiosity piqued. I opened it. The message was cautiously worded, filled with platitudes about hoping I was well, before subtly pivoting. Heard things have been difficult for Uncle Michael and Aunt Sarah. It read, something about having to move out of the house, and Chloe is apparently struggling to adjust. Such a shame. Hope they figure things out. It was a clear, albeit indirect, probe. A testing of the waters. Perhaps a message sent under duress. Or maybe just familial gossip filtering through the grapevine. I read the words, picturing the inevitable scene. My parents, forced into a smaller, less comfortable reality. Chloe likely complaining incessantly. The three of them grappling with the consequences of their choices. A flicker of something pity. No, not pity. Perhaps a detached acknowledgement of the unfortunate reality they had created for themselves. There was a faint echo of sadness for the family unit that had imploded, for the potential that had been squandered through selfishness and deceit. But there was no guilt, no urge to swoop in and rescue them. That door was closed, locked, and the key thrown away. I reread the email one last time, recognizing it for what it was: another potential hook, another attempt, however subtle, to draw me back into their orbit of need. With a click, I deleted it and read, unanswered, irrelevant to the life I was now building. I leaned back, looking away from the screen, towards the window. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the city, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. My future spread out before me, not as a predetermined path dictated by others' expectations, but as an open horizon, full of possibility. The scars remained, of course. Betrayal by those closest to you leaves marks that don't entirely fade, but they were scars, not open wounds. They were reminders of a difficult past, but also testaments to my own resilience, my own capacity to choose a different future. Sometimes, I reflected, the thought settling with quiet certainty. Loving yourself means drawing lines, even with the people you're supposed to love unconditionally. Sacrifice is only noble when it's acknowledged, appreciated, and reciprocated. When it becomes an expectation, a tool for manipulation, it's just slow self-destructs. I had chosen my life. I had chosen peace. It hadn't been easy, and the wreckage of my former family life was a somber monument to that struggle. But standing here, on the cusp of my own adventure, free from the chains of unearned obligation, I knew, deep in my core, that I had done the right thing. Everyone, ultimately, has to be responsible for their own life, their own choices, their own consequences. And I was finally, fully responsible for mine. How do you find today's story? Leave a comment below. If you like this video, please like and share. Especially don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our interesting and exciting stories.